This sound appeared in an instant, causing all the gods of Great Xia who were trying to block the black mist to shudder simultaneously. Has the situation already become this serious? Even the three heavenly venerable lords can't do anything about this mist. Thunder God exclaimed in shock. No, there are many ways to resist the mist. True Lord Jade Tripod made a sword seal with one hand, looking back at the Great Xia territory behind him and smiled somewhat bitterly. But in this process the casualties among mortals will inevitably reach an extremely terrifying level. Even if we stop the mist, the foundation of the Great Xia nation will wither away completely. Great Xia can exist without us gods, but not without its millions of citizens. When true Lord Jade Tripod said this, all the nearby gods fell silent. But if we fall into reincarnation, what will happen to Great Xia? Won't those foreign gods take the opportunity to attack Great Xia, destroy the nation and seize its foundation? They won't. The coverage of this mist is not limited to our Great Xia alone. Overseas nations are also being attacked by the mist right now. If those foreign gods also choose to sacrifice themselves to preserve their territories, then this world will completely enter an era without gods. Furthermore, even if some of their deities remain, they will be severely weakened and unable to attack Great Xia. Besides, with this mist present, they won't be able to move freely for a short period, so they won't pose a significant threat to Great Xia. As true Lord Jade Tripod finished speaking, a tremendous sound came from the distant sky. Lin Chia turned to look and saw a majestic and sacred heavenly divine kingdom emerging from the void at the distant cloud peaks. Immortal energy swirled around it, crane shadows flew about, and misty immortal energy poured out from the heavenly gates like waterfalls, descending from the gray sky to the mortal world. That was the divine kingdom of Great Xia, the heavenly court. At that moment, a giant hand pierced through space and violently struck the surface of the heavenly court. Crack! Fractures rapidly spread across the surface of the heavenly court, thunderous explosions echoed in the sky above. The misty immortal energy collapsed and dispersed, and the golden light surrounding it faded away at a visible speed. Boom, boom, boom. The hand continuously struck the heavenly court, forcefully shattering it from the center. The massive divine kingdom gradually disintegrated from the cloud peaks. The Great Xia divine kingdom, which symbolized past glory, was breaking apart piece by piece under the palm of the heavenly venerable Lord. The gods of Great Xia standing before the mist silently watched this scene, their fists involuntarily clenched, their eyes filled with pain and reluctance. For them it wasn't just a divine kingdom, it was the home where they had lived for thousands of years, the foundation of the entire Great Xia mythology. Now they had to destroy it with their own hands. As the heavenly venerable Lord's final palm descended, the entire heavenly court collapsed into countless fragments falling from the cloud peaks to the mortal world. Numerous golden threads condensed into a sphere, slowly rotating in the air, emanating a supreme and profound meaning. Lin Chia recognized that golden sphere. At Takamagara, the heavenly venerable Lord had used just one golden thread to cut down the Japanese divine kingdom Takamagara into the sea. That was the essence of the heavenly court. Under the heavenly venerable Lord's dividing hand, that essence split into 9 parts, transforming into streams of light flying toward various borders of Great Xia. One of them instantly pierced through space and flew to the sky above Lin Chia and the others. That strand of essence fell to the ground, instantly raising billowing dust. The entire Pamir Plateau shook violently. When the dust settled, a black steel base existing between reality and illusion stood erect at the border. The gods of Great Xia stood before the mist, looking at the black steel base with extremely complex expressions. In their eyes there was reluctance, helplessness, determination, and acceptance. Some of them showed no hesitation at all and were about to step forward when a cyan light swooped down from the sky. It was a beautiful woman wearing a golden-purple divine robe and a golden phoenix crown. Her beautiful eyes gazed at the black steel base beneath her feet as she slowly spoke. The great calamity has arrived. I, as the Queen Mother of Heaven and Earth, in response to the heavenly venerable Lord's decree, am willing to shatter my cultivation to bless the people of Great Xia with eternal peace. Seeing this scene, Lin Chia stood frozen in the sky. Logically, the scenes before him were all time fragments, and both he and the Queen Mother were witnesses outside these fragments. Even if the Queen Mother stepped forward now, it shouldn't have any impact on the fragments. Why was she doing this? As if sensing Lin Chia's confusion, the Queen Mother glanced at him, and then a voice sounded in Lin Chia's mind. No need to be surprised. I'm merely repeating the choice I made back then. This avatar has guarded Kunlun for 100 years, completing its mission. Letting it enter the divine steel again with the shadows of the immortals is also a way to complete a cycle of reincarnation. As her words fell, endless divine light surged from the Queen Mother's body. Like a burning cyan sun, she unhesitatingly sacrificed herself by crashing into the black steel base. Boom! Dazzling divine light bloomed between heaven and earth. The Queen Mother's form dissipated in the air. Half a breath later, streams of divine power interwove from the steel base, quickly outlining the shape of the divine steel. A vast and majestic pressure rolled out from the stone steel. Lin Chia stood stunned for a long while, his fists tightly clenched. The Queen Mother's self-destruction of her avatar would not have any effect on the black steel base in the time fragment, but in the fragment the stone steel was still outlined. This was not caused by the Queen Mother's current avatar, but in that historical moment 100 years ago, when the Queen Mother's true self shattered her cultivation and merged into the stone steel, leading to this scene. However, the Kunlun mirror could not replay the Queen Mother's form from back then. It could only record the changes in the stone steel. But combined with the dissipation of this avatar, it completely replayed the scene from that year. Lin Chia took a deep breath, his form descending from the sky as a black figure flew past him. Endless netherworld energy swept out. The Emperor of Fengdu stepped on the void, his imperial robe fluttering in the wind. Those calm, ancient eyes gazed at the gradually outlined stone steel before him, slowly closing. He sighed deeply and murmured, "After reincarnation this emperor must recover quickly. Otherwise, with no one to manage the vast Fengdu, the netherworld will fall into chaos." The 6 silver rings spinning in his palm suddenly paused. A strand of profound fate thread floated out from the Emperor of Fengdu's body, wrapping around one of the rings. With a flip of his palm, these 6 rings vanished into the void, returning to Fengdu. After doing all this, he took a deep breath. Dense netherworld death energy erupted from his body as he charged directly toward the illusory stone steel. The Northern Yin Emperor of Fengdu of Great Xia, in response to the Heavenly Venerable Lord's decree, is willing to shatter his cultivation to bless the people of Great Xia with eternal peace. As his words fell, his form crashed into the black stone steel, his body dissipating into divine power that rapidly outlined the divine steel's illusory form. Mount Gonger. In the howling wind and snow, a hand suddenly grasped the edge of the nearly vertical mountainside, and a figure climbed to the summit with difficulty, rolling in the snow like mud for 2 turns before lying on their back. Shortly after, another figure climbed up, coughed violently several times, staggered a few steps and fell headlong into the snow. The 2 teenagers lay at the summit, breathing heavily. Lu Baoyu glanced at Fang Emo, the corners of his icy lips uncontrollably curving into an arc. Cough, you were half a second slower than me. If I hadn't mistakenly grabbed an illusory rock and slid down a few meters, you would have been the slower one. Fang Emo snorted, then after a pause shook his head helplessly, "But I admit defeat. I acknowledge that you won this time, Lu Baoyu." Boom. Surging divine light and deep humming came from the distant border. Lu Baoyu and Fang Emo were startled simultaneously, struggling to get up from the ground to look. They saw endless black mist rolling not far from the border. In the vast snowy landscape, a magnificent black stone monument stood like a pillar reaching to the heavens. Countless gods stood beside the divine monument, rushing toward it one after another. Great Xia's North Yin Fengdu Emperor, in response to the Heavenly Venerable's decree, willingly sacrifices his cultivation to protect the people of Great Xia for eternal peace. Great Xia's Golden Immortal Chijingzi, in response to the Heavenly Venerable's decree, willingly sacrifices his cultivation to protect the people of Great Xia for eternal peace. Great Xia's Golden Immortal Yellow Dragon, in response to the Heavenly Venerable's decree, willingly sacrifices his cultivation to protect the people of Great Xia for eternal peace. Great Xia's Water Virtue Star Lord, in response to the Heavenly Venerable's decree, willingly sacrifices his cultivation to protect the people of Great Xia for eternal peace. One after another, the gods of Great Xia, like moths to a flame, burned their lifelong divine power and cultivation, crashing into the towering stone monument. Each time a god merged with it, the monument became more solid. By the time the rolling black mist approached the border of Great Xia, the monument had reached hundreds of meters in height. That is, Fang Emo watching this scene was completely stunned. Lu Baoyu stood at the summit, seemingly forgetting the fatigue and pain in his body, watching the distance like a stone statue, his eyes filled with deep shock. That is the phantom from 100 years ago, when the gods of Great Xia sacrificed themselves to form a monument guarding the border. A voice came from behind them. The two turned to look and saw two men wearing deep red cloaks sitting on a protruding rock. One was Bailey Pang Pang, whom they had just met, and the other was Shin Qingzhu, silently smoking. The phantom of Great Xia's gods from 100 years ago? Fang Emo murmured. Did all this really happen? Of course, otherwise why would Great Xia's celestial court fall apart? And why would the gods of Great Xia not appear for 100 years? Bailey Pang Pang sighed. For these 100 years, they've actually always been here. Fang Emo and Lu Baoyu looked at the divine monument in the distance and fell silent. Before this, they knew that Great Xia's survival from the mist invasion was related to the gods of Great Xia, but they didn't understand the details. Only now, as witnesses to this history, did they truly understand the truth behind it. The reason they could be born and grow up safely was because 100 years ago, countless Great Xia gods used their cultivation and bodies to build a wall of divine miracles for them. Survival Day was also the final day for the gods of Great Xia. Creak. Boots stepped on the thick snow. Shin Qingzhu threw away his cigarette butt and calmly walked behind the two, his eyes gazing peacefully into the distance as he slowly spoke. Rookies. Yes, sir. Salute. Shin Qingzhu stood straight, silently raising his right arm to give a standard military salute to the gods of Great Xia in the sky. The howling wind and snow brushed across the faces of the two young men. They looked at the light flickering in Shin Qingzhu's eyes, were stunned for a moment, then reacted, turning to face the direction of the Great Xia gods and solemnly saluting. One by one, new recruits staggered up from the edge of the mountain peak, and seeing this scene they all froze in place. After learning everything from their companions, they stared at that time-clipped silhouette for a long while, biting their lips, dragging their exhausted bodies to stand straight, turning sideways toward the distance, raising their hands in salute. That tragic and magnificent scene, those gods rushing toward the stone monument without hesitation, was deeply engraved in their hearts through their eyes. The mountain peak, which should have been filled with cheers and excitement after passing the test, was now completely silent. Kayesh Border Defense Company. Damn it, what exactly is going on? Ku Changlin stood on top of the dormitory building, looking at the towering divine monument less than 2 kilometers from the Border Defense Company, his eyes wide open. Gods. They're all gods of Great Xia. Suja murmured. But how can there be so many Great Xia gods here? And what's with the mist? Hearing this, Ku Changlin suddenly froze. Gods? Could the legend be true? What legend? Ku Changlin looked at the tall black divine monument in the distance and slowly spoke. When I first came to this Border Defense Company, I heard some old soldiers talk about rumors. When the mist first descended, a black divine monument mysteriously appeared not far from the Border Defense Company, with many gods standing on clouds like a dream. Then what happened? Suja became interested. After daybreak, those gods and the divine monument all disappeared. But after that, the border mist never advanced even half an inch. Ku Changlin frowned slightly. Before, we all treated it as a story, saying they saw a mirage, but now it seems it might not be that simple? As the two were talking, the speakers distributed throughout the Border Defense Company suddenly emitted a buzzing electrical sound, and soon Qingyu's voice echoed throughout the entire Border Defense Company. Please remain calm, everyone in the Border Defense Company. Listen to my unified command. One divine shadow after another rushed toward the black divine monument, and the Great Xia gods standing against the misty border grew fewer and fewer. Young friend Lin. A voice came from behind Lin Chia. A Taoist was standing behind him, looking at him with a complex expression. Jade Tripod True Person. Lin Chia immediately recognized the Jade Tripod True Person who had led him into the peach banquet in Kunlun Void. Young friend Lin, you should not get involved in this matter, the Jade Tripod True Person said seriously. You have not yet entered the divine realm, and even if you sacrifice yourself to the monument, it won't have much effect. Let us older generation handle this. We are about to enter reincarnation, and for a long time to come, Great Xia will be entrusted to young people like you. Lin Chia opened his mouth about to say something, when Jade Tripod True Person transformed into a beam of light, rushing rapidly toward the towering divine steel. Jade Tripod, Golden Immortal of Great Xia, in response to the Heavenly Venerable's decree, I willingly sacrifice my cultivation to bless the people of Great Xia with eternal peace. As the words fell, Jade Tripod True Person's form crashed into the steel, countless divine powers surging and sweeping through, disappearing in an instant. At this moment that heavenly steel already soared into the sky, and vaguely, one could see the faint outline of its peak. With just a bit more divine power, this heavenly steel would reach perfection. Lin Chia's lips parted slightly, staring at this scene in a daze, unable to utter a word. Just then he keenly felt a gaze fall upon him. Lin Chia turned to look. Yang Jian stood behind his divine manifestation, his silver robe fluttering in the wind. He gazed at Lin Chia for a long time, then slowly turned his head to look at the shadow of the black stone steel. On his ice-cold face appeared a faint smile. So this is the truth of my entering reincarnation. There was no regret in his eyes, but rather a gleam of acceptance as he murmured, "It's not a bad ending." Bajin. Yang Jian. Lin Chia looked at that familiar face, his heart tightening. He flashed to Yang Jian's side, instinctively reaching out to grab his wrist. His hand passed through as if through nothing, grasping only emptiness. Lin Chia's body trembled. The howling wind swept past his ears as Yang Jian, draped in his silver robe, stood before him, quietly watching the struggle in his eyes, smiling gently. It seems you truly care for your brother. To have a brother like you in the next life would indeed be fortunate. Since that is so, even facing the tribulation of reincarnation again, what is there to fear? He turned around, gazing at the nation-protecting divine steel that was missing just one corner, holding his three-pointed double-edged blade, his majestic figure seeming to support the entire dim sky. Brother, you and I shall meet again in the next life. As his words fell, a dazzling silver light burst from his body, and his entire being transformed into a beam of light, rushing rapidly toward the heavenly divine steel. Yang Jian, second master true lord of Great Xia, in response to the Heavenly Venerable's decree, I willingly sacrifice my cultivation to bless the people of Great Xia with eternal peace. Yang Jian's voice thundered like rolling thunder in the sky. As his form filled into the divine steel, the last missing corner was completely repaired. Boom! With a muffled explosion, a terrifying pillar of divine power surged from the steel into the clouds. Lin Chia's outstretched hand hung in midair as he stared blankly at the soaring pillar of divine power, motionless like a statue. In his heart, it felt as if something was missing, suddenly becoming empty. Pain and struggle appeared in those bewildered eyes. Damn it! His hands trembled as they fell, speaking in a voice only he could hear. Boom boom. 6 consecutive pillars of divine power shot up from various positions along Great Xia's borders. Invisible walls of divine miracle connecting between the numerous divine steels, gradually covering Great Xia's borders, blocking the advance of the mist. Only in the southeast and southwest directions were 2 pillars of divine power yet to appear. The missing divine power pillar on the southwest side created a gap hundreds of miles long in the divine miracle wall of this nation-protecting steel on the Pamir Plateau, allowing endless mist to roll in through the gap, about to completely invade Great Xia's borders. Those 2 steels lack sufficient divine power. Let's hurry to support them. The few remaining Great Xia deities, seeing this, changed expression dramatically and transformed into beams of light, rushing toward the nearest southwest direction without hesitation. Old Sand Monkey Brother, let's go there too, the pure altar master said anxiously upon seeing this. The golden-bodied Arhat Shah Wujing nodded, about to leave on a cloud, when he saw the victorious fighting Buddha still standing before the mist, his golden eyes staring intently at the rolling black mist, every hair on his body standing on end. Monkey Brother? What's wrong? Something's not right. The victorious fighting Buddha gripped his golden cudgel, his expression extremely solemn. There's something about to break through from this mist. As his words fell, the 2 men simultaneously jolted and turned to look at the mist. Faintly, the deep roars of giant beasts came from within the mist. The sound grew clearer and closer to Great Xia's border. Just as it was about to pass through the mist and enter Great Xia, it suddenly went quiet. The air fell into dead silence. The pure altar master swallowed, about to say something, when in the next moment 5 enormous mysteries roared as they burst out from the mist. They all emitted terrifying waves at the peak of the Klein realm. So there really was life existing within the mist? This thought flashed through golden-bodied Arhat Shah Wujing's mind, but before he could act to counter, a massive golden cudgel had already struck those mysteries, brilliant golden Buddhist light instantly illuminating the sky. Painful howls emanated from within the boundless golden light. Their forms rapidly dissolved in the Buddhist light, and by the time the victorious fighting Buddha withdrew his hand, their forms had completely vanished. This single strike had completely obliterated the 5 mysteries. The golden cudgel returned to its original size in the victorious fighting Buddha's hand. Even after eliminating these mysteries, his expression showed no relaxation as he continued to stare intently at the surrounding mist. He could sense that more mysteries were lurking in the mist outside the border, ready to seize any opportunity to enter Great Xia's territory. It seems quite a few evil spirits have also broken through in the southwest. The pure altar master's eyes glowed with Buddhist light as he gazed into the distance, his brows tightly furrowed. Monkey brother, I'll leave this to you. Old Sand, let's go save people over there. All right. The victorious fighting Buddha squinted at the mist before him. Be careful. The pure altar master and the golden-bodied Arhat transformed into 2 beams of light, soaring upward, following the rolling western mist border toward the southwest. As they got closer to the gap in the divine miracle wall, massive amounts of mist surged out like a tide, completely breaking through Great Xia's border and rolling toward the heartland. But since part of the mist had been blocked by the divine miracle wall, the speed at which the mist spread into Great Xia's territory had increased several times, like a river breaking through a dam. Second brother. The mist over there is almost reaching inhabited areas. Golden-bodied Arhat Shah Wujing shouted as he caught sight of the distance. The purifying altar envoy looked back and saw that the distant mist was less than 2 or 3 kilometers away from engulfing the cluster of yurts gathered in the distance. Go. Save the people first. Without another word, the purifying altar envoy grabbed the golden Arhat beside him and rushed quickly toward the yurt settlement. When the 2 arrived at the yurt settlement, the rolling mist had already swallowed more than half of the yurts. Sandy transformed into a rainbow light, rapidly moving among the remaining yurts to rescue the people. The purifying altar envoy stood before the rolling mist, his eyes revealing a struggle. Ordinary people who hadn't cultivated would only survive 20 breaths after falling into the mist. There should still be many people alive in this mist, and he didn't have much time left. The purifying altar envoy gritted his teeth, steeled his heart, and plunged directly into the rolling mist. The deathly mist rapidly consumed the faint Buddhist light around his body. In just 3 breaths, his divine power foundation began to loosen, and his face turned extremely grim. Indeed, as the 3 golden immortals had said, this mist had a natural suppressing effect on divine power. If this continued, his fall from divine realm would be a matter of moments. Enduring the intense pain, he sniffed the air, rushed into a yurt, rescued 2 dying herdsmen, and used his miraculous method to send them outside the mist. Then he rushed toward the next yurt. Just then, as if sensing something, his body suddenly shuddered. In the rolling mist around him, several enormous and bizarre beasts were rapidly approaching. The Buddhist light around his body had grown extremely weak. His divine power fluctuated intermittently, and even using miraculous methods had become difficult. He repeatedly tried to send people out of the mist, but all attempts ended in failure. To hell with being the purifying altar envoy. In this mist, it's completely useless. He growled, and his earlier idea surged into his mind. With determination flashing in his eyes, he suddenly raised his right hand and struck his own crown. Bang! A muffled sound came from his throat as the faint Buddhist light around him collapsed automatically. His realm shattered from the divine level, dropping directly to the peak of the Klein realm. Simultaneously, a demonic wind howled out from within his body. His form rapidly expanded, transforming into a mountain-sized black wild boar that let out a loud roar, its eyes blood-red. In an instant, dense demonic power gushed out like a fountain. At this critical moment between life and death, he chose to abandon his divine realm and transform from mortal to demon. From this moment on, he was no longer the purifying altar envoy of the Western Heaven, but the terrifying great demon who had dominated the mortal world 1,000 years ago. Pixie opened his huge mouth, and a demonic wind surged from the void, directly sweeping up dozens of yurts along with the unconscious herdsman inside into his giant pig mouth. Then he turned abruptly and rushed toward the outside of the mist. From the moment he transformed into a demon, the threat of the surrounding rolling mist to him greatly reduced. Although it was still constantly corroding his body, it was much better compared to before. Was this mist targeting divine beings? As Pixie was running wildly and pondering, more than 10 black giant shadows emerged from the mist behind him, joining forces to attack him. This was inside the mist, a world where mystery ran rampant. The appearance of such a conspicuous demonic aura immediately attracted the attention of many mysteries around. Having dropped in realm and with his mouth full of herdsmen, Pixie had no intention of fighting them in the mist. He could only use his demonic body to withstand their attacks, and in just a moment his body was covered in wounds. Just then a light rapidly expanded before his eyes. It was an angry-faced Buddhist guardian. "Second brother. Go quickly. I'll hold them back for you." The golden Arhat Sandy roared, withstanding the surrounding mist, forcibly engaging in battle with more than 10 peak Klein realm mysteries. Buddhist light surged in Sandy's palms as he tore apart the bodies of several mysteries with his bare hands. But the black mist, like a god-killing bizarre beast, continuously consumed the divine power foundation within him. The Buddhist light around his body grew weaker and weaker, and his divine core began to falter. Watching the golden Arhat gradually being swallowed by the mist, the giant pig demon's eyes turned extremely red. Its enormous body rushed out of the mist, staggered across the snow plain for hundreds of meters, then collapsed to the ground, its heavy body making the entire earth tremble slightly. Its giant mouth opened and many surviving herdsmen fell to the ground with the demonic wind. The pig demon's body rapidly shrank, returning to its original form. Pixie, wearing tattered Buddhist robes, his once plump white belly now covered in bloody wounds, had a horrific gash in his waist where blood flowed like a river. Vaguely one could see intestines churning. With bloodshot eyes he struggled to stand up, gripping a silver nine-toothed rake in one hand, and transformed into a stream of light, charging back into the mist. "Sandy! Hold on!" Boom! The victorious fighting Buddha brought down his staff again, crushing several mysteries that had rushed out of the mist. Just then his heart skipped a beat and he froze in place. In the southwestern border, the 2 divine power pillars that had yet to appear finally shot into the sky. The last 2 national divine monuments had been completed. The miraculous walls interwove and connected, forming a giant barrier without blind spots, completely blocking the rolling mist outside the border. Several mysteries appeared in the mist, seemingly wanting to rush into Dasha's territory, but were firmly blocked outside by the perfectly formed miraculous wall. The entire western border had fallen into silence. In the endless wind and snow, only the victorious fighting Buddha holding the golden cudgel and Lin Chia stood quietly in place. "Idiot Sandy!" the victorious fighting Buddha murmured, as majestic divine power surged from within his body. He transformed into a stream of light, rapidly flying toward the southwestern snow plain. Seeing this, Lin Chia felt a sense of foreboding and followed closely behind on the somersault cloud. Soon, a corner of mist isolated within the miraculous wall appeared before the two. The miraculous wall, completed midway, had separated this mist that had already rushed into Dasha's territory. Without the influx of subsequent mist, this corner of mist now looked like a murky fog, gradually dissipating in the air. The ground was covered with mystery corpses piled on the desolate snow plain, roughly 30 or 40 in number. In front of those corpses, a blood-covered figure was weakly kneeling before a body, with blood flowing from his intestines, dyeing a large area red. Bang! The victorious fighting Buddha's figure heavily crashed to the ground, his form flickering as he arrived beside the two figures. He saw the cold corpse lying in front of Zhu Beiji, its eyes unable to close in death and froze in place. It was an Arhat whose pale golden skin now lacked any luster, covered in dark blood stains. The divine core inside had completely shattered, falling to mortal status. Countless bite marks from giant beasts covered the body, creating a horrifying sight. Only those eyes, unable to close in death, remained wide open, glaring at the emptiness before them, like a Buddhist Vajra who had died while meditating. Seeing this, the victorious fighting Buddha's body suddenly shook, standing still like a sculpture. Brother Monkey. Zhu Beiji, kneeling on the ground, looked up at him, a bitter smile appearing on his pale face. Sha has entered nirvana. The victorious fighting Buddha's body trembled slightly. He clenched his fists tightly and almost roared. What happened? I rushed into the mist to save people. Sha came to support me, and then a large group of demons. Cough, cough, cough. Before Zhu Beiji could finish, he began coughing violently. With each cough, large amounts of fresh blood gushed from his waist, with strands of black mist dispersing from the wound, stealing his life force. The victorious fighting Buddha's pupils contracted. He reached out to hold Zhu Beiji in his arms, his ancient ape face, full of Buddhist divine intent, twisted violently with anxiety. Idiot! He reached out and pressed on Zhu Beiji's blood-soaked waist, but still couldn't stop his life force from fading. Brother Monkey. I might have to go down to accompany Sha. Zhu Beiji squeezed out a miserable smile on his honest face. Shut up. The victorious fighting Buddha roared, the Buddhist light around his body exploding outward, frantically pouring into Zhu Beiji's body to sustain his life. However, he didn't know healing techniques, and the black mist mixed in Zhu Beiji's waist greatly suppressed the flow of divine power. Besides forcibly using his cultivation to extend Zhu Beiji's life, there was nothing else he could do. Damn it, damn it, damn it. The victorious fighting Buddha cursed continuously as he watched Zhu Beiji's face visibly pale. He suddenly seemed to remember something and turned his head back. Looking at the figure wearing a deep red cloak standing not far away, as if grasping the last lifeline, he shouted loudly. You're the patriarch's disciple. Do you know any healing techniques? Any method will do. As long as it can barely stabilize his life, I'll immediately take him to find. His words stopped abruptly halfway. He stared blankly at the 9 national divine steels in the distance, the flame of hope in his eyes rapidly extinguishing. Now all the gods had sacrificed themselves to become steels. In the entire Great Xia territory, there were no powerful beings who could heal Zhu Beiji's injuries. They were all dead. But even so, a tiny bit of hope remained in the victorious fighting Buddha's eyes as he looked at Lin Chia standing in the distance, a faint light flickering in his gaze. Lin Chia stood in the howling snow, watching the victorious fighting Buddha's desperate gaze, and his heart twisted with an unprecedented sense of guilt washing over him. He couldn't save him. Although he stood before the victorious fighting Buddha, they were separated by 100 years of time and space. They were just illusions created by the Kunlun mirror. They didn't actually exist. Moreover, even if Lin Chia were truly standing there, he had no way to heal Zhu Beiji. At most, he could barely sustain Zhu Beiji's life with a miracle, but with all the gods of Great Xia withered away, no one could save him. He opened his mouth and hoarsely, bitterly uttered 3 words, "I'm sorry." Hearing this, the last glimmer of hope in the victorious fighting Buddha's eyes completely vanished. He turned blankly to look at Zhu Beiji in his arms, 2 tears sliding down from his eyes. Seeing this, Zhu Beiji squeezed out a smile at the corner of his mouth. He tremblingly reached out to touch the victorious fighting Buddha's face. Brother Monkey, don't cry. This time, Old Pig saved many people, didn't disgrace our journey to the West team. Cough, cough. I'm going down to find Sha now. You and Master should continue being good Buddhas. Abandoning divine status to become demons can indeed avoid the mist slaughter and stay in the mortal realm to protect the people, but your strength will be greatly weakened and you can never go back. In this world it still takes gods to change things. Brother Monkey, you and Master are stronger than us and you've finally achieved enlightenment. You must live until the end and see for Old Pig what the future of this world looks like. Perhaps this is Old Pig's fate. As the last word left his lips, the final spark of life in Zhu Beiji's eyes extinguished completely. He weakly dropped his hand and stopped breathing altogether. The victorious fighting Buddha held his corpse blankly, silently opening his mouth as if wanting to say something more, but nothing came out. His tear-streaked face twisted hideously. He suddenly raised his head, opened his mouth toward the dim sky, and let out a heart-wrenching roar. To hell with destiny! The sobbing snow on the blood-red earth emitted a mournful hum. This last god of Great Xia helplessly fell to his knees, pounding the ground with his fist again and again, venting the madness in his heart. The black mist rolled silently outside the wall of divine miracles, with shadowy, mysterious figures moving through the mist, their outlines flickering in and out of visibility. The victorious fighting Buddha's right fist, which had been pounding the ground, suddenly stopped. He widened his eyes, staring intently at the mist before him, his expression utterly ferocious. He suddenly reached out and grabbed a corner of his golden Kasaya robe, his eyes burning with endless rage and unwillingness. Buddha. To hell with Buddha. If I can't protect the human world, can't protect you all, what use is this Buddha robe and position to me? His eyes blazed with resolute light as his hand gripped the edge of the Kasaya, pulling forcefully to tear it apart bit by bit. The golden Buddhist light surged violently, painful howls escaping from his throat. As the corner of the Kasaya gradually broke apart, terrifying demonic energy leaked out from within him, mixing with the Buddhist light. What he was tearing was not just a Kasaya, but the Buddhist enlightenment he had achieved through countless hardships. Rip. With a light sound, he forcibly tore off a corner of the Kasaya. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His right eye, which had been flashing with golden Buddhist light, suddenly turned blood red. Violent and terrifying demonic energy rose from half of his body. Demons, Buddha's light, these two completely different things, were rubbing and colliding with each other on his body, mutually incompatible like water and fire. Sun Wukong knelt on the ground, his face twisted violently under the torture of these two forces. Lin Chia, standing behind him, showed shock in his eyes. Having experienced the great sage's possession, he clearly understood what kind of torture these two completely different powers were to the soul. Although Sun Wukong had now achieved enlightenment and his spirit was incredibly strong, not dispersing under the mutual rejection of these two forces, the pain was impossible to erase. That feeling of having one's soul torn in half was enough to drive anyone mad. The demonic energy and Buddha's light intertwined within Sun Wukong's body as he gritted his teeth and slowly stood up from the ground. Heaven was destroyed, all the gods of Great Xia had perished. In this vast world only he remained as a deity. Hatred and anger filled his chest. Despite the vastness of the world in his eyes, he had only one destination left. Those enraged eyes stared fixedly at the rolling mist before him, flashing with unprecedented killing intent and madness. Miss, I want to see what the hell you really are. He gripped the golden cudgel in his hand, and the terrifying aura of half-demon half-Buddha raged through heaven and earth. He took a powerful step forward, endless clouds churning beneath his feet, carrying his body as he charged toward the mist without hesitation. He passed through the invisible wall of divine miracles, his figure completely disappearing into the mist. With his disappearance, the 9 national guardian steels gradually faded from mortal view. The invisible wall of divine miracles eternally protected the entire territory of Great Xia, keeping the deadly mist at bay. In the deathly silent world, only the endless howling of the wind remained. A deep red figure stood beside the corpses of Zhu Beiji and Sha Wujing, before the magnificent border of the mist, like a statue standing silently in place. 1 minute, 2 minutes. After who knows how long, he could no longer suppress the pain in his heart. With an angry growl, he smashed his fist into the snow beneath him. Snow flew up all around, and that face, twisted with pain and appearing extremely fierce, showed a deep sense of powerlessness. Lin Chia fell to his knees on the snow plain. In his mind were images of the gods of Great Xia crashing into the steels like moths to a flame. Queen Mother of the West, Jade Pure True Person, Emperor Fengdu Yangjian. In his mind he kept hearing those resounding oaths filled with the resolve to die. Finally he seemed to see again Sun Wukong's eyes with a glimmer of hope, gradually turning to despair and collapse. Fuck. He buried his hands in the thick snow, opened his mouth and let out a roar. Damn it! Damn it! He couldn't change anything. Why did he have to witness all this with his own eyes? The time projection receded like the tide. The black mist outside the border gradually returned to a grayish-white color. The scattered corpses of mysteries lying on the ground, along with the bodies of Zhu Beiji and Sha Wujing, and the pool of blood spreading beneath them, gradually disappeared without a trace. The power of the Kunlun mirror's time replay was completely interrupted at this point. The hazy sky vanished, replaced by a pitch-black night. It was unclear what time it was. Not a trace of light existed in the world. Endless darkness covered every corner of the Pamir Plateau, like a hopeless and deathly abyss. Lin Chia knelt in the snow, completely unaware of his surroundings. Just then, countless crisp sword chimes exploded from somewhere in the void. They mixed with the howling cold wind, like sad and painful lamentations. Lin Chia was stunned. He raised his head in confusion, looking around, and gently placed his right palm on his chest. He didn't know where these sword chimes came from, but he could clearly sense that within these endless sword chimes were emotions just like his own: grief, unwillingness, anger. Can swords also have feelings? At this moment, Lin Chia seemed to realize something and lowered his head, muttering, "All things in the world have spirit. The sword is the chief of all weapons with even greater spirit. Only by forging the soul with intent, letting it observe emotions, when emotions and sword chimes unite, forging the sword and sharpening its edge, can its spirit communicate with the divine." Those were the words the Queen Mother of the West had told him, and the reason she had shown all the previous scenes. She was letting the swords observe emotions, using the resolve to die shown by the many gods of Great Xia who sacrificed themselves to become steels, to infect the spiritual swords, to forge and sharpen them. Thousands upon thousands of sword chimes echoed in Lin Chia's ears. He could clearly sense the emotional resonance each sword had with him. They were not just swords, but also the audience and participants in this magnificent epic. Lin Chia could even feel that their sword chimes contained exactly the same resolve to die as the gods of Great Xia. Bless the people of Great Xia with peace for 10,000 generations. Those swords do not speak, their emotions run deep as the sea. As Lin Chia resonated emotionally with the many ancient swords, a figure stepped out from the flying snow of the void and stood before him. The golden-threaded purple divine robe gently swayed in the wind. The Queen Mother of the West, wearing a golden crown, reached out her hand to help Lin Chia, who had fallen to his knees, and gently brushed the snow from his cloak. A touch of tenderness appeared in her beautiful eyes that shifted with flowing light. "Queen Mother," Lin Chia opened his mouth and spoke somewhat hoarsely, "you don't need to blame yourself. This is the history of our Great Xia from 100 years ago. It cannot be changed. You have merely witnessed it all again." The Queen Mother's voice was extremely gentle. A bitter expression appeared on Lin Chia's face. Even knowing that everything that had just happened was only an illusion for Lin Chia, who had been in the midst of it, it was a real experience. His sadness, his guilt, his unwillingness, his anger, all of it was real. Only by personally experiencing all this could he truly understand the weight behind the 4 words, "Collapse one's cultivation to become a steel guarding the nation." His fists clenched uncontrollably. Just then, the Queen Mother seemed to sense something and turned her head to look east. "Lin Chia, look." The Queen Mother spoke softly. Lin Chia looked up and saw a faint light emanating from among the snow-capped mountains in the east. A hint of dawn climbed up the pitch-black night sky, dispelling the endless darkness and abyss. "Queen Mother, what is it?" he asked in confusion. "Dawn has broken." The Queen Mother gazed at that ray of sunlight and calmly said, "Our era should also return now." Lin Chia was stunned, then seemed to think of something and looked again toward the direction of the rising sun. Today was the day the devil's training ended. It was also the final, 10th day. Norse. Asgard. The grand and majestic temple, like towering peaks, gathers above the divine realm. At the very core of the temple complex stands a divine mountain, radiating a silvery glow, towering high. Atop this divine mountain, a sacred and magnificent giant temple quietly stands at the highest point of all Asgard. Countless divine lights surge forth from within the temple, resembling the cornerstone of the entire divine realm, evoking a sense of reverence at first glance. Beneath the divine mountain, several fair-skinned, golden-haired Western deities are gathered, gazing up at the towering and sacred supreme temple, their expressions complex. "Is today the day?" one of the Western gods tentatively speaks. Another deity slightly nods. "The battle invitation from the Great Xia's celestial sovereign states today." "No way." The celestial sovereign of Great Xia really dares to storm into Asgard alone? Has he gone mad? I don't know. In any case, Asgard is on high alert right now. Even the Rainbow Bridge is completely closed. I heard that a few Indian deities rushed over from the Temple of the Gods a couple of days ago, probably to guard against that celestial sovereign. Upon hearing the words Indian deities, the Western gods present couldn't hide their disgust. Does Asgard really need those guys' help? It's disgusting. When did the God King become so timid? Even if the gods of Great Xia charged into Asgard and confronted us directly, they might not be our match, let alone just one celestial sovereign. While the gods were whispering among themselves, a figure clad in white armor rushed from the Rainbow Bridge, speeding down the jade-paved Sunset Avenue. It was a robust man with golden hair, carrying a sword on his back, exuding an imposing presence. He galloped his horse to the foot of the divine mountain, not stepping onto the 1,000-step staircase. Instead, a pair of holy wings extended from the back of his white horse, lifting him directly toward the supreme temple at the mountain's peak. The white horse's wings flapped vigorously, quickly reaching the top of the 1,000-step staircase. The man leaped off the horse, pushed open the heavy and magnificent temple doors and calmly walked inside. Inside the temple, many people were already standing. Thor, the god of thunder, Loki, the god of trickery, Frigg, the mother of the gods, and in a corner of the temple 2 men shrouded in shadows, their figures indistinguishable. The golden-haired man walked straight to the center of the temple and respectfully knelt halfway on the ground before the one seated on the pure white divine throne, the one-eyed elder. Father, I have patrolled all around Asgard and found nothing unusual. The one-eyed elder slowly opened his eyes. Rise, Tyr. Tyr stood up, casting a sidelong glance at the 2 unfamiliar men in the shadows, his brow slightly furrowing, and stepped back to stand beside Loki and Thor. Today is the 10th day as written in the battle invitation. Thor, draped in a red robe, stood beneath the divine throne, his brow furrowed as he spoke. Will the celestial sovereign of Great Xia really come? Who knows? Loki, casually playing with a wooden sword, had a thin piece of cloud paper tied to the end of the sword's handle. That was the battle invitation from 10 days ago, which had pierced the divine throne. The Rainbow Bridge is already severed. Even if he wants to come, he can't enter Asgard. The god of war, Tyr, said lightly, but even if he does come, we are not afraid of him. Heimdall is guarding the Rainbow Bridge and the gods of Asgard are never afraid of battle. We do not need support from any dubious forces. As he finished speaking, he glanced again at the 2 shadows in the corner. On the divine throne, the one-eyed elder's gaze passed through the open doors of the temple, directly landing on the edge of Asgard's Rainbow Bridge. The dim night sky soaked the sky outside the bridge and the stars seemed to grow dimmer. His eyes narrowed slightly. Suddenly, a flicker of flame shot out from the thin piece of cloud paper at the end of the wooden sword that Loki was holding, quickly igniting. Loki's expression changed and he immediately threw the wooden sword away. The light wooden sword landed in the center of the empty temple with a crack, swaying slightly before becoming still. A beam of dawn's light tore through the pitch-black night sky, passing through the open temple doors and falling upon the burning piece of cloud paper. At this moment, the cloud paper was nearly burned to ashes, leaving only the 6 large characters, Celestial Sovereign of Ta Ching Dauda, in the lower right corner, gradually turning to embers and floating within the temple. On the divine throne, the one-eyed elder's expression changed slightly. Loki, what are you doing? Thor frowned upon seeing this. It wasn't me. Loki shot him a glare. If it wasn't you, then who else could it be? Before Thor could finish his sentence, he abruptly stopped. The many gods present seemed to sense something and turned their heads to look outside the temple. At the very edge of Asgard, a straw sandal lightly stepped onto the fractured bridge surface. Bright red dawn rose from the east, like a raging fire, instantly burning a large hole in the pitch-black night sky. A figure clad in a black and white Taoist robe walked leisurely, the wide sleeves gently swaying in the wind, appearing both mortal and celestial. No one knew where he came from or how he entered the Rainbow Bridge, but the moment this Taoist appeared, a name surfaced in the minds of all the gods in Asgard like a red-hot iron, stamped deep within their hearts. Celestial Sovereign of Ta Ching Dauda. That was the celestial sovereign of Great Xia. The Taoist wore a pair of straw sandals and with each step he took, It seemed he was stepping on the rainbow bridge. However, upon closer inspection, one would find that his feet were suspended slightly above the ground, exactly 9/10 of an inch off the surface. This seemingly ordinary Taoist, with every gesture, exuded a profound Taoist charm. The Tao de Celestial Sovereign walked through the air, his Taoist hair tousled and brushing against his cheeks. He slightly raised his head and his clear bright eyes seemed to pierce through the void, directly locking onto the one-eyed elder on the divine throne from 1,000 miles away. The Tao de Celestial Sovereign's lips parted slightly, and the next moment his voice echoed across the skies of Asgard. "Odin, come out and meet me." At the sound of this voice, the expressions of the gods in Asgard changed simultaneously. They abruptly turned to look at the rainbow bridge, disbelief evident in their eyes. He really came? Within the supreme temple, Odin, seated on the divine throne, grew increasingly grim. His hands rested on the armrests of the throne, showing no intention of moving. His single eye calmly gazed at the distant Tao de Celestial Sovereign, remaining as immovable as a rock. On the rainbow bridge, the Tao de Celestial Sovereign sighed helplessly, and his previously halted steps moved forward once more. Since that's the case, don't blame this humble Taoist for being rude, for visiting uninvited. The moral celestial master stepped forward, lightly gliding over the broken half of the rainbow bridge, and let out a soft exclamation, looking ahead in surprise. At the end of the rainbow bridge stood a giant clad in resplendent golden armor, holding a holy sword, standing like a mountain. A powerful divine force surged from within him, and his furious eyes were filled with a lofty battle intent. Is this the rumored guardian of the Asgard rainbow bridge? The moral celestial master raised an eyebrow, his gaze calmly sweeping over him. He does possess some strength. The celestial master of the great Xia, Heimdall, stood at the head of the rainbow bridge, coldly staring at the approaching figure. Sorry, this path is closed. Is that so? The moral celestial master replied lightly, stepping forward with his right foot and gently stamping down. The entire rainbow bridge, along with half of Asgard, shook violently under this step. In an instant, all colors in the world were erased, leaving only black and white. Beneath this scene reminiscent of an old movie, only the moral celestial master in his Taoist robe retained his original colors. Heimdall blinked, and the figure of the Taoist vanished from his sight. Just as he was about to take action, a deep voice echoed from behind him. "The road to the temple is too far. I still need a mount." "You quite good." Heimdall's pupils suddenly contracted. A hand gently landed on his shoulder, and a torrent of black and white energy surged into Heimdall's body. Mysterious Taoist techniques intertwined within him, and the massive figure clad in golden armor began to shrink at a visible speed. His hands, which held the holy sword, gradually transformed into hooves, and his furious eyes lost their luster. The giant body curled up on the ground, green fur intertwining with his skin, like a giant bag enclosing his entire being. In less than 10 breaths, the giant guarding the end of the rainbow bridge was transformed by the Taoist technique into a green ox, standing docilely beside the Taoist. The moral celestial master reached out and patted the large ox's back, mounting it with ease, and smiled faintly. "Rest assured, this Taoist technique can only last for a day. After the time is up, you will return to your original form. Today I will trouble you to carry me for a while." The green ox, under the moral celestial master's hand, showed no resistance, its dull gaze turning towards the direction of the supreme temple, and it began to walk step by step towards the divine mountain, carrying the Taoist. On the divine mountain, except for Odin, the king of the gods on the throne, the other Norse gods on either side were filled with shock. "He turned Heimdall into an ox?" Thor exclaimed in disbelief. "How on earth did he do that?" Loki stared intently at the distant Taoist riding the ox, his brow furrowed tightly, his narrow eyes flickering with a glimmer of thought, pondering something. The god of war Tyr's eyes ignited with anger. He clenched his teeth and stepped forward, bowing to Odin on the throne, and spoke solemnly. "Father, please allow me to lead the Norse warriors to confront him. We cannot let him breach the temple. It is an insult to Asgard." Odin shifted his gaze from the moral celestial master, glanced at him and nodded slightly. "Go." "Yes." Tyr's eyes flashed with lofty battle intent. Without another word, he drew his sword and rushed out of the temple, vanishing like a streak of light. Asgard, Sunset Avenue. On this main road paved with jade that led straight from the Rainbow Bridge to the Divine Mountain, a Taoist riding a green ox was slowly walking through the air. Numerous Norse gods and divine attendants gathered on either side of the avenue, gazing at the Taoist on the ox, their eyes filled with various emotions: fear, curiosity, worry, and anger. These onlooking Norse gods were not all skilled in battle. In fact, a large portion were gentle gods like Bragi, who only knew how to plant, play instruments, weave, and compose poetry. Very few could muster the courage to step forward and intercept this terrifying figure from the Great Xia. The moral celestial master rode the green ox, leisurely walking along Sunset Avenue for nearly a stick of incense's worth of time, yet not a single god made a move to stop him, which amused him somewhat. No wonder you managed to survive the erosion of the mist 100 years ago. Heh. The moral celestial master lightly mocked. He rode the ox through Sunset Avenue and arrived at the foot of the Divine Mountain where the Supreme Temple was located. Just as he was about to ascend, countless streaks of light flew in from the horizon, transforming into armored Norse gods, standing in disarray on the 1,000-step staircase leading up the mountain. At the last step, the god of war Tyr held a sword in one hand and a shield in the other, coldly watching the celestial master at the foot of the mountain, his eyes flashing with a chilling, killing intent. It seems not all Norse gods are cowards. The moral celestial master lightly leaped down from the ox's back, patted its horns, raised his hand, and a wooden sword instantly whistled out from the supreme temple at the mountain's peak, landing in his grasp. Clad in black and white robes, holding the wooden sword, he calmly began to ascend the steps. "Kill him!" The god of war Tyr growled, and the many gods standing on the steps looked down at the Taoist, rushing down in a swarm. Countless brilliant divine lights erupted from the mountain. The moral celestial master, holding the sword in one hand, showed no change in expression. He gently raised the fragile wooden sword, and in an instant, the surrounding world was once again dyed in black and white. Pale and dark divine attacks crashed down but could not touch him in the slightest, all eerily swirling around him, while a few strands of disheveled hair danced in the wind, chaotic yet orderly. He raised the wooden sword and casually slashed in front of him, black divine blood gushing forth, splattering onto the stone steps of the mountain. Even facing the onslaught of the gods, his steps did not falter. Instead, he ascended the steps with a peculiar rhythmic pace, each sword stroke causing large groups of gods to fall. Behind him, the white sun slowly rose. Clay. With a light sound, Tyr's right arm was severed by the sword light, crashing to the ground. He spat out a mouthful of black blood and fell from the mountaintop. The moral celestial master stepped forward, reaching the last step. The black and white colors enveloping the world finally dissipated, and a red sun hung behind him, casting a bright red hue over the blood-soaked stone steps. Grass sandals, Taoist robe, Taoist hairpin, wooden sword. The celestial master was not stained with a single drop of blood. He looked like a Taoist who had just bathed and burned incense, still exuding a faint fragrance. He held the sword and gently stepped into the temple, looking up at the one-eyed old man seated on the pure white throne, and smiled slightly. "Odin, I have come to kill you. Moral celestial venerable." Thor looked at the moral celestial venerable, who had slaughtered his way through the Nordic War Department without a single drop of blood staining him, standing before the temple, and a sense of helplessness rose in his heart. He knew that there was an insurmountable chasm between the supreme god and the deities, but it was only when he stood before a celestial venerable that he truly realized how terrifying the oppressive aura brought by the supreme god could be. Yet even so, as one of the main gods of the Nordic pantheon, he could not retreat at this moment. Although he did not understand the grievances between the Nordic and the Great Xia, nor did he know why the Great Xia celestial venerable brought such terrifying killing intent to Asgard, these matters were indeed important, but what truly influenced Thor's actions was only his stance. He was a god of Asgard. This was his home. Regardless of the reasons, if the Great Xia gods wanted to destroy this place, he could not stand idly by. Beneath his red robe, blinding lightning surged in Thor's palms as he warily watched the moral celestial venerable at the temple entrance. Above the temple, dark thunderclouds had gathered into a vortex, slowly spinning. Destructive lightning danced densely among the clouds. The moral celestial venerable stood at the temple door, seemingly oblivious to all of this, calmly gazing at the one-eyed elder on the throne, and slowly spoke. I have already killed my way here. Are you still not prepared to make a move? Do you really think these few junior gods can stop me? Or are you too afraid to act? The moral celestial venerable's eyes narrowed slightly, as if trying to see through the one-eyed elder. Just then, from the dark corner behind him, a Western god with tightly closed eyes eerily emerged from the shadows. He gently raised his hands like a ghost, his palms passing through the void, silently reaching toward the moral celestial venerable's eyes from behind. At the sight of that figure, Thor's heart skipped a beat. One of the main gods of the Nordic pantheon, the god of darkness and blindness, Hod. Hod was different from the nameless minor gods blocking the steps. He was one of the important main gods who built the Nordic pantheon, just like the distinction between the golden immortals and the earth mountain gods in Great Xia mythology. Their strengths were not on the same level at all. When had he hidden there? Just as those hands were about to touch the body of the moral celestial venerable, the venerable's eyes slightly focused, and a powerful spiritual energy erupted from beneath his black and white robe, directly repelling the blind god Hod back several steps, blood trickling from the corners of his tightly closed eyes. Boom! Hod's attack was like a signal. Thor suddenly roared out from his position, raising his hand toward the sky. The fierce lightning instantly pierced through the temple's roof, accurately smashing down toward the venerable's head with a silver hammer. The moral celestial venerable reached out one hand toward the retreating blind god Hod while holding a wooden sword in the other, the sword tip pointing at the silver hammer that was crashing down with thunder. With a loud bang, endless lightning danced wildly above the robe, and the entire temple trembled violently. Just as the venerable was dealing with the two main gods, a strange shadow suddenly swept in front of him. Loki's right hand shot straight toward the heart of the moral celestial venerable, and at the same time, strands of black silk rapidly intertwined around him. The moral celestial venerable stood between the lightning and darkness, calmly looking down at Loki, his gaze showing no emotional fluctuation. He opened his mouth and gently exhaled a breath. From within the man in the black and white robe, a second figure emerged, reaching out to casually grasp Loki's outstretched wrist. The black and white energies instantly enveloped him, freezing Loki's form in place. I remember now, the second figure said, staring at Loki's face. I heard that over a decade ago a god of trickery from the north invaded Great Xia, destroying a city and exterminating millions. Is this god of trickery you? Loki's heart suddenly skipped a beat. A flash of brilliance crossed his eyes, and the black silk around him had already intertwined completely. As the trickery was triggered, his form vanished from the venerable's grasp, reappearing behind him in the next moment. A killing intent erupted from Loki's eyes. But just then, a third figure stepped out from behind the venerable, fingers together in a sword shape, lightly slicing through Loki's neck in midair. Puff! With a soft sound, Loki's head fell heavily to the ground, blood splattering out. Staring at the head that would not close its eyes, the moral celestial venerable seemed to have discovered something, letting out a soft "oh" and slightly furrowing his brow. With a shake of his hands, the blind god Hod suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. The silver hammer on the wooden sword's edge trembled violently, and the thick lightning connecting to the sky was gradually torn apart, a surge of spiritual energy rushing upward, directly scattering the dark clouds. Thor's form crashed heavily to the ground, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, and his right hand, gripping the silver hammer, trembled uncontrollably. Moral celestial venerable. Thor stood beneath the throne, his voice hoarse. I know Asgard initiated the war against Great Xia and we are indeed at fault, but this was not the intention of the gods of Asgard. Our two nations have never had any deep-seated grievances. I think. Shut up. A deep voice came from above the throne, interrupting Thor's words. He looked up in shock, only to see the one-eyed elder had stood up at some point. Odin coldly glanced at him, and a chill instantly enveloped Thor's body. Hearing this, the moral celestial venerable smiled lightly. It seems the gods of Asgard do not understand the situation. You have concealed it well, Odin. Thor stood frozen in place, confusion filling his eyes. Asgard and Great Xia indeed have little enmity, but you, Odin, the moral celestial venerable said lightly, a glimmer appearing between his eyes. Bang! Before the venerable's words could finish, the towering white throne exploded into fragments. A surge of divine might swept from Odin's body, instantly pressing down on the shoulders of the moral celestial venerable. With a loud hum, the entire divine mountain sank several meters into the earth, a wave of dust and air rapidly spreading outward from the mountain. The one-eyed elder slowly stood up, looking down indifferently at the moral celestial venerable below the steps, the surrounding space twisting as if layers of shackles were tightly binding the venerable above. The grass shoes beneath the venerable's feet were torn into strips, and his black and white robe billowed in the wind, yet his gaze showed no sign of wavering. He gently parted his lips and spoke the next sentence. "But you, Odin, personally released the nameless fog from Antarctica, bringing suffering to the world, causing the gods of Great Xia to destroy their heavenly court and collapse their cultivation, all to exchange for a glimmer of hope for millions of common people. How should this blood feud be settled?" The bound moral celestial venerable slowly raised his hand, the wooden sword breaking free from the spatial shackles, piercing directly toward Odin's face. Odin frowned, and the wooden sword was suddenly frozen in front of him, as if an invisible wall was blocking it, trembling and humming violently, yet it could not advance even a fraction. At that moment the wooden sword unexpectedly exploded, countless sword energies howling out, one of which broke through the invisible wall, slicing through the corner of Odin's brow and instantly severing the black eye patch that covered his right eye. The moral celestial venerable's eyes narrowed slightly as he slowly said, "Gods of Asgard, open your eyes and take a good look. Sitting on that throne, is it still the Nordic god king you are familiar with?"